Kendrick Lamar is my favorite artist out there today. I mean, his lyrics, his albums, his stage presence, his authenticity, it's magic. What am I doing? This video is not about how great I think Kendrick is. If you know, you know. No, this video is about something that I think is much more interesting. I believe Kendrick Lamar is Martin Luther King Jr. reincarnated. And I believe that Kendrick Lamar knows that. I originally came up with this theory a couple of years ago when Kendrick first released his Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. If you're familiar with the album, you know it's brilliant. And that Kendrick has been doing a ton of work around healing, like therapy, meditating, praying, all trying to release some of the stored trauma that he incurred as a child and as a young adult that became extremely famous. But what I believe that most commentators missed about the album altogether was Kendrick's deep discussion about karma and past lives and all of the challenges he experienced while meditating and looking at his ego face to face. Like, yeah, people heard him, but unless they understand themselves how the ego works and the logic of karma and the fact that reincarnation is real, not just symbolism, I don't think they can fully appreciate the level of consciousness from which Kendrick is speaking from. If you're new to this channel, welcome. My name is Ethan Hill. I'm an international yoga teacher, writer, and entrepreneur, helping seekers like you adjust to the new earth. I'm going to split this video into 4 different parts. Part 1, I'm going to explain to you how karma and reincarnation work. Part 2, I'm going to speak about the specific karmas of Kendrick Lamar and Martin Luther King Jr. Part 3, I'm going to present to you my theory that Kendrick knows he's MLK Jr. reincarnated. In part 4, I'm going to talk more generally about why I think this topic is important for your own awakening. So how does reincarnation and karma actually work? When most people think about karma, revenge comes to mind, right? Like I punch you in the nose unprovoked and then turn around and slip on some ice. That's karma. I had it coming. Well, this interpretation does hold a little bit of water. Karma is actually far more nuanced. Karma is not inherently good or bad. It's actually neutral. Karma is the impersonal principle of cause and effect in the universe. It's the reality that your thoughts and decisions have consequences, whether good or for ill. When you really understand karma, you see that it's basically the same thing as the first law of thermodynamics in physics, except with one key difference. Karma deals with subjective reality, whereas the first law of thermodynamics deals with objective reality. Now, of course, subjective reality is what you feel on the inside, and what you perceive with your mind. It's the noumena of anger and love and joy that populates your conscious experience. And objective reality is what is. It's the measurable phenomena of things like hormones and organs and temperature fluctuations that occur right alongside your subjective feelings. In the objective world, when you throw a ball in the air, you would say that it must return back to the earth, so that the gravitational and kinetic energy scales balance out. But if that ball had a subjective experience, right? If that ball actually felt something as it was being tossed up in the air, well, then you would say its karma was to return back to the earth. It was always destined to return to its source. In other words, whatever was set in motion must eventually settle, or else the universe remains in some way unbalanced and owes an energetic debt. Same thing with you and me and Kendrick Lamar. Anytime we have a thought or make a decision, any thought or decision, that creates a very subtle energetic imbalance in the universe that must be accounted for and equalized too. Metaphysically speaking, the unique ways that these imbalances or misalignments get corrected for is the very life you're living right now. As a simple example, let's say a thought appears in your mind that tells you to eat the cookie that's sitting right beside you. The energy of that thought is a cause that must lead to an effect. And that happens either through 1, you eat the cookie, so the energy of the thought then manifests as glucose, fat, and heat for the body. 2, you consciously choose not to eat the cookie and watch the thought transform itself into the uncomfortable feelings and sensations of craving, dissatisfaction, or hunger. Or 3, you get distracted with another desire and forget all about eating the cookie, which means that the energy of that thought gets stored in the unfathomably large databank and cloud of your mind to be examined at a later date. That third option is extremely crucial for understanding reincarnation. Just as the fat and skin and bones that make up your physical tissue of your body are just an outpicturing of all of the decisions you made about food in your life. The yogis suggest that the same occurs with lifetimes. That is, your entire psyche and physical body and life circumstances are just a rendering of the thoughts you had while you were distracted from this lifetime and in previous ones. Like, how is it fair that some children are born into extreme poverty while other ones are born into extreme wealth? And how is it fair that just 70 measly years on Earth determines whether someone goes to hell or heaven forever? It's not fair. Like, that doesn't make any sense. It's the least fair thing ever. Unless reincarnation is real. Without multiple opportunities for experience and achievement and redemption, God looks more and more like a seditious tyrant instead of a loving and benevolent creator. Okay, now what determines the specifics of one's birth, linearly speaking? 2 things. The karma at the moment of death in the previous incarnation and the specific soul contract of the one choosing to incarnate. Say you're driving around in your beat up 2001 Toyota Corolla and you see a sleek, brand new Porsche speeding by you. Oh, wow, you think to yourself, I wish I had one of those. Unfortunately, you're now so preoccupied with thinking about getting that new car that you miss the fact that there's a red light up ahead. So you bowl through the intersection, get T-boned by an incoming car, and die. The end. Or is it? That singular thought is energy that's been set in motion. It's the metaphorical ball that's been thrown up in the air that hasn't yet come back down. In other words, that desire for a car is a universal imbalance, aka karma, that seeks equilibrium through either the letting go, conscious letting go of the desire, or the actual materialization of the desire. Both of which, because you died, actually require another birth to take place. Without reincarnation, people's karma just wouldn't be able to be resolved, period. It's just law, it's just cause and effect. What goes up must come back down. What ye sow, ye shall reap. All right, let's look at some basic facts here. MLK was assassinated on April 4th, 1968. Whereas Kendrick Lamar was born 19 years later on June 17th, 1987. Depending on one's karma, humans can really come back at any time after the death of their previous incarnation. But generally speaking, it happens around 1 year after their birth and typically no more than 10 years after. That said, there are many, many exceptions to this rule. The greater the soul or the more work they do on the material plane to serve the creator, the more time they typically take in between incarnations, so as to get more rest, so to speak. And seeing as MLK was quite a large figure that did a lot for this world, waiting 19 years to reincarnate seems pretty reasonable. Now, if reincarnation really is true, right? If reincarnation happens to anyone who hasn't fully tied up the loose ends of their story or has unfulfilled desire, then there's really no greater candidate than MLK for being reincarnated. Like, the man put his heart and soul and energy into creating a more fair and just and equitable world for everyone. And then he was murdered for it. Talk about a universal imbalance, right? Like, think about it. If you were MLK, you'd probably have a lot of thoughts during your lifetime about what sort of future you helped create for your African-American brothers and sisters. And based on what you now know about karma, that thought or those desires then should catapult you into another life, presumably as an African-American, maybe just to check in on how things are going. Of course, we would expect the reincarnated version of MLK to have quite a few attributes and virtues to them, all of which, I'll list them, Kendrick fits perfectly. We'd expect the reincarnated version of MLK to be quite famous and outspoken. We'd expect him to have an incredible way with words. We'd expect him to have a relationship with the church. We'd expect him to use his voice to liberate and support his community. And we'd expect him to transcend cultural boundaries and focus on unifying the country. That's Kendrick. And the last clue here, this one will be a little bit more controversial, is all of the theories surrounding MLK and his sexual promiscuity. You can watch the story of that theory here, but the TLDR is this. The FBI stalked MLK for years. They bugged his home, his calls, the hotels he would travel to, and what they found, allegedly, is that he slept around and cheated on his wife a lot. Who knows if it's true? And besides, who are we to judge? All of us have skeletons in our closet. But if it's true, it fits quite nicely into the narrative of MLK reincarnating as Kendrick, because Kendrick, too, according to his Mr. Morale album, had a pretty bad sex addiction problem, often cheating on his partner. Good news is that Kendrick finally seems to have shaken off that layer of karma, as he alludes to in his album. He sat in the Valley of Silence for years, just letting each desire resolve into feelings of grief and shame and guilt and lust and all the rest, without caving to them or distracting himself from them. In other words, Kendrick's now free of his karma. Now, all right, if you're buying my argument so far, let's explore the next one. Does Kendrick believe that he's MLK reincarnated? I think yes, but I think that he only found out recently, and that Mr. Morale was his coming out story, so to speak, around what he views is his particular karma and the role he has in this particular life. But before we even get to that album, let's take it back to a few songs in Kendrick Lamar's discography in which he discusses MLK in some capacity. The first of these songs was recent, but technically unreleased. It's called Prayer, and a third of it takes place in the actual perspective of MLK. I remember taking my first breath, August 28th, 1963. That was the day of the I Have a Dream speech, by the way. The whole nation had saved the day. I made it on TV. My come out was a standing ova, the crowd in disbelief. How could a group of words be so great, designed to make you think? Coincidence? Probably. But who else is writing songs from the perspective of MLK? Visions of Martin Luther staring at me. Malcolm X put a hex on my future, someone catch me. And then it goes on. And I want everybody to view my autopsy so you can see exactly where the government had shot me. No conspiracy, my fate is inevitable. Is Kendrick having a premonition for this life, or is he having a memory from a past one? Martin had a dream. Martin had a dream. Kendrick have a dream. What is Kendrick's dream if not a continuation of MLK's? Transcending boundaries, unifying the culture, healing the scars of the past. Then you have his entire Damn album, which is this beautiful and comprehensive deep dive into the spiritual problems facing the United States. I highly recommend you check out season 5 of Dissect to get a deeper analysis. But for now, I'll just highlight one song that does a good job at showcasing how thoughtful and transcendent Kendrick Lamar is when it comes to American politics and injustice, just like MLK was. The great American flag is wrapped and dragged with explosives. Compulsive disorder, sons and daughters, barricaded blocks and borders. Look what you taught us. It's murder on my street, your street, back streets, Wall Street, corporate offices, banks, employees, and bosses with homicidal thoughts. Donald Trump's in office. We lost Barack and promised to never doubt him again. But is America honest, or do we bask in sin? Pass the gin and mix it with American blood, then bash him in. You crippin', or you married to blood? I'll ask again. Oops, accident. It's nasty when you set us up, then roll the dice, then bet us up. You overnight the big rifles, then tell Fox to be scared of us. Gang members or terrorists, etc., etc. America's reflections of me. That's what a mirror does. And fuck me, that's so good. Finally, now we come to what I think is the strongest evidence for Kendrick being MLK reincarnated. And that's his entire Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers album. Now, again, I think all of Kendrick's prior discography where he mentions MLK or MLK adjacent topics, I think all that was just a coincidence. But from this point onwards, I think Kendrick actually understands his role. I'll start with all the times that he references karma and past lives. I don't pass judgment. Past life regressions keep me in question. Where did I come from? I don't think like I used to. And then, one of these lives, I'm gonna make things right with the wrongs I've done. That's when I unite with the Father, Son, till then I fight. By the way, what he's subtly referring to here is this notion that when we clear our karma or absolve ourselves of all sins, there's a moment, there's an actual experience that small egos undergo in which they die, they dissolve into or through Christ, so that they become one with God or the Father. In fact, yoga, which is what this channel is all about, literally means to unite, and specifically with God. So in this particular verse, Kendrick is actually admitting slightly that he practices the true, authentic version of yoga. Anyways, until that happens, until one actually clears the cache of their karma and rights all of their wrongs, as the Bhagavad Gita so eloquently put it, one must fight tooth and nail to overcome unconscious tendencies and egotistical desires. Transformation. I must have 1,000 lives and like 3,000 wives. Past life regressions to know my conditions. It's based off experience. Karma for karma, my habits insensitive. Past life regressions, by the way, are when you're starting to have full-on memories of previous incarnations. And it's actually been quite studied from University of Virginia's Department of Perceptual Studies. There's quite a bit of science around this. In fact, the reason I care about this subject so freaking much is because I've been having past life regressions too, ever since COVID started. For the longest time, I thought I was going crazy. Like, it was really, really challenging until I discovered that other people were undergoing it too. Anyways, do you really think that Kendrick Lamar, the first and only hip-hop artist to win the Pulitzer Prize, is at all mincing his words here? No way. I bet he's actually going through this process and is trying to translate and explain and share that with his fans. I'm sensitive. I feel everything. I feel everybody. One man standing on two words. Heal everybody. Transformation and reciprocation. Karma must return. Heal myself. Secrets that I hide. Buried in these words. Death threats. Ego must die. But I let it purge. The amount of pressure that this man feels is unfathomable to someone like you and me. I mean, to have millions of people watching your every single move and expecting you to be this voice of reason, to be above it all, and to heal or set free an entire culture and generation. I can't even imagine. And now to the song that says it outright, the final one in the album. Celebrate new life when it come back around. The purpose is in the lessons we learn in now. Whose new life is coming back around that he's celebrating? What lessons is he learning now? I wasn't perfect. The skin I was in had truly suffered. Temptation and patience, everything that the body nurtures. I felt the good, I felt the bad, and I felt the worry. But all in all, my productivity had stayed urgent. Had stayed urgent. Past tense, not present tense. Reflected on my life and what I'd done. Paid dues, made rules, change out of love. Them same views made schools change curriculums, but didn't change me staring down the barrel of that gun. I completed my mission, wasn't ready to leave, but fulfilled my days. My creator was pleased. And though my physical won't reap the benefits, the energy they carry on emits still. I think this song speaks for itself. Like, is it possible that Kendrick is just having some artistic rendering of a prediction about his current life? Sure, absolutely possible. But given the fact that he talked so much about karma and past lives in the entire album, I think he's being much more literal here. As Kendrick so often points out in his albums, he is a mirror for his fans, not their savior. In other words, when we get all obsessed about the beef between him and Drake and Super Bowl stuff, or choose to judge Kendrick's decisions, we're entirely missing the point of his message. Kendrick wants you to scrutinize your own life, to get clear and heal your own imperfections, not to fixate on how damaged and corrupt everyone else is. In this way, while it's cool and fun to have all these pet theories about Kendrick being MLK reincarnated, ultimately none of that matters, because that's his karma. That's his thing. And to focus on his karma at the expense of looking at your own is to perpetually tap dance around your own trauma. to get stuck in this endless cycle of suffering and birth and rebirth instead of getting freed into the kingdom of heaven. Working on myself, the counseling is not easy. Don't you point a finger just to point a finger, because critical thinking is a deal breaker. Faith in one man is a ship sinking. Do yourself a favor and get a mirror that mirror grievance, then point it at me so the reflection can mirror freedom. Hey, thanks for watching all the way through. Really appreciate your time and attention. Let me know in the comments what you thought about this. Like, does it make sense? Are there holes in my logic? I'd love to hear your analysis. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to sign up for my free Body, Mind, Soul newsletter. It's a popular email that I send out each and every Sunday morning where I give you advice for healing your body, mastering your mind, and liberating your soul, along with my upcoming yoga classes and workshops. The link is in the description below. Otherwise, if you want to dive deeper into the practice of yoga itself, consider taking one of my free yoga tutorials. There, you're going to learn how to get really flexible really quickly, relieve stress, wake up faster, upgrade your nervous system, and much more. Thank you for liking and subscribing, and I'll see you in the next video. Peace.